Howdy, folks! Happy Friday! Thank God it's Friday. We had some games in the NHL last night. We're going to talk a little World Junior. We're going to take some questions in the chat later on, but we'll start with some pre-show stuff. Go ahead, Russ.
So let's talk about injuries in sports and how they're reported. I know we've talked about it before, but we're starting to see where, and I don't know if it's so much the gambling influence, but it could be, but it's just more interest in fans and reporters wanting to know what's up with guys. So as an example, you have Carson Wentz in Philly. The other day, Doug Peterson, the coach, comes out and says, he's got a tight back or a sore back, and we're monitoring it. And, he may not play this week. He's questionable. Then you find out that, well, there's a CT scan, and then you find out all this other stuff, right? So then they go back today, and he comes back and says, well, he has a
stress fracture.
He didn't say a stress fracture. He said a stress problem or something like that. He wouldn't say fracture. Would not say the word
stress problem.
I know.
We all have stress problems.
It was something like a stress situation, a stress problem, but he wouldn't say stress injury. I think he just said stress injury. And he wouldn't say a stress fracture. And he said non-surgical will cure it and could be, it could be a while. We don't know. It's developing. And I don't want to answer questions about it, right? So he's already at that point shedding so much doubt on what's going on, whether the team doctors did it right, whether the team did it right. Like all these questions start coming up because they're just not open about what's going on with the guy. What's funny about this is if you just go by league rules are he's got to be on the injury report. Now, at 10 minutes into this press conference, he finally did answer someone when they asked the prognosis, and he goes, could be up to 3 months. Well, if a guy could be up to 3 months being out, why in the world is he questionable for this week's game? Like that, and that's where we get into for all sports. They need to do a little better job with this because, again, it just casts too much doubt, and there's not enough information about what's going on with your favorite players or your favorite team or a team you might be gambling on.
Well, and there's a little bit of echo here. The player was Carson Wentz, Dan. Okay. But the funny thing is that, and I heard this from a reporter up in Toronto, and I won't reveal the reporter, but I'll talk about the player. And it was like in the context of like a playoff fantasy hockey draft. You remember a few years ago, I believe it was the last time that the Blackhawks won the cup, Patrick Kane wasn't supposed to be back until the second round. And at least the second round, maybe even the conference final. And this reporter found out from his contacts that Patrick Kane was going to play in the playoffs. So, of course, he drafts him in like the 5th round or 6th round. And, he wins. He probably ends up winning the pool because nobody thought he was going to be in, and nobody thought he was going to be at 100%. But because the reports out there were he wasn't going to play, it caught the team that they played in the first round unsuspecting. And then, I don't know if they were fully prepared for Patrick Kane being in the Blackhawks lineup. What to the point I'm trying to make here is we know that in the NHL, in the playoff scenario, there is this chicanery, there's this shell game, there's this haze in terms of the severity of injuries because of the fear that the other team is going to target the person.
This guy hasn't practiced all week. There is 0% chance of him playing. 0.
Right, and then that's what I think is going on here is that he's listed as questionable, but they're making the other team.
But the other team's going to ignore it, right? If you play for the other team, they were like, "We know Carson Wentz isn't playing. We know Nick Foles is playing." My basic point is, at some point, I think a league needs to do something with this and say, "No. After what you've just said, he can no longer be on the list as questionable. That's just silly."
And the point I made, Jan, is the fact that the NFL allows this to be done because what the hell are we talking about right now? They want the attention. They want the controversy. They want, I don't think they do anything about officiating because the controversy drives content on ESPN and other outlets. I think they like this chaos. They enjoy it.
Well, I mean, it's interesting. So you compare the NFL and the NHL. The NFL, for at least gives you what the injury is. They're forced now to give you if the player's practiced on a limited or a full basis. But if you compare and contrast what we've seen in the NHL, where we have concussions referred to as upper body injuries, right? You've had misrepresentation of whether or not the player actually has an upper body or a lower body injury, and they won't reveal what that injury is, won't reveal if he's going to be out and how long of an absence is. So the NHL, with the migration now to the gambling that's become prevalent across all of the leagues, they're going to have no choice, I think, but just kind of, quote unquote, up their game and be forced to provide real information and honestly real-time information. So, and again, in the NHL, right, in the playoffs, if a guy has a broken thumb, for example,
playoffs is never going to be real-time. It won't.
No, okay, sorry, real information as opposed to the pseudo information we're getting now, or the misinformation. But the problem becomes is, how do you force a team, if you're in the playoffs and a guy has, let's say, a broken thumb or a broken wrist or whatever, to not necessarily give you inaccurate information? I mean, are you going to actually fine that team?
Yeah, you penalize.
Oh yeah, you're fine a big fine.
Yeah, you penalize them. You have to.
Okay.
If you don't, then you're just basically backing them for being surreptitious. And if you do that, then they'll keep doing it because there's no penalty, there's no consequence.
Here's what I think.
They'll call it gamesmanship as opposed to being surreptitious. So.
No, I get it, but here's what I think, and this is how you could eliminate the gamesmanship. I think what they should do is when they have the pregame skate, the minute that ends, the team has to come out and put out a report. What's up with the players not playing, the scratches? Because, and if it's a real healthy scratch, fine. Because we always see the chicanery of guys warming up with teams that can never, ever play, like Joe Thornton, as an example.
Just one thing here, baseball related, before we start the show. There was a three-way trade yesterday that confused me a little bit, Russ, between the Indians, the Mariners, and the Tampa Bay Rays. And the reason it confuses me is because the Seattle Mariners are obviously in some sort of teardown where they're trying to peel off salary. You know, although they just wanted to get rid of Robinson Cano because of the the 80-game suspension, and but they wanted the 5 years off of their books, and they're paying, I don't know, what is it, 60-70% of his salary. So they're not getting a lot of savings, but they're getting some. But then they turn around and they trade for Edwin Encarnacion, who's making $25 million or $20 to $25 million
for how many more years?
2 years.
Okay.
So where is this? And I don't think the Indians are retaining any salary here. So it's a very
the Indians got Carlos Santana, didn't they? And he's making $20 a year. So that's where the other part of this is. So Carlos Santana,
but also don't forget Tampa Bay. He's going to end up in Tampa Bay.
Who is?
The rumor is that as part of that trade, Encarnacion will end up in Tampa Bay.
Okay.
That's where why
by Bob Nightingale. Then it was contradicted. Then it's been reported again. That's why Bowers, I think, and Diaz were both part of that deal.
Okay.
To make sure to why he ends up in Tampa. And again, there's a lot back and forth on it, but I think that's the end result of what the trade's going to be.
All right. So they're being the clearinghouse, and the Phillies originally traded Santana, so now he's been traded again, and he ended up on the team that he originally was on.
Right.
This is what happens when salaries get bigger. This is what happens. Remember, everybody wants to harp on the Bobby Bonilla deal. The Rockies are just getting out of Mike Hampton's contract this year, and he was signed in 2001. My big joke is he said it in the press. He wanted to go there because the school systems were better, not because he was getting paid an extra $50 million.
Yep.
And clearly, all this time later, the Rockies were paying Hampton deferred money, but nobody mentioned the Hampton deal. They always mentioned the Bonilla deal.
And Michael Meyer on Twitter, one of the guys who's a Met beat, does some Met stuff for Metsmerize, put together a fairly comprehensive list of deferred payments. It's huge. And also take a look at what the Washington Nationals are paying in deferred payments for Scherzer and some of these other guys.
I'm sure.
It's huge money. Again, I don't love the idea of $1 million a year, and I guess somebody's going to have to wipe the smile off his face, as he told Bob Clappish in the Met clubhouse that year. But he's not the only one, and he's not even the one making the most amount of money here.
No, I know. It's just the one that everybody likes to go to.
And then you wonder how soon, because remember Troy Tulowitzki got not bought out. They basically just told him go away. we're going to pay you your $38 million for the last 2 years. I'm wondering when that's going to happen with the Yankees with Jacoby Ellsbury, but I think they think that he actually might come back and play, and they might be able to pawn him off on somebody else and pay like 75% of his salary just to get rid of him.
I think it will happen this year with Ellsbury. I will tell you, I don't understand the Blue Jays in the sense that we all knew Tulowitzki should not be playing on turf based on his back problems and other things. That's why when teams like the Mets and other teams with grass were looking for him, it was so stupid that – and I didn't want the Mets to get him because of this injury history of his, and it's proved out. But to put him on a team with turf, I get – and you said they wanted to get rid of Reyes so bad that, they did it. But, boy, you can't – these days you've got to really do your research. And if there's a guy who – is going to play a fair amount of games with a bad back on AstroTurf, you should not get that player.
A Blue Jay reporter said all they did was kick the can down the road because Reyes's contract would have been up in a year after, and they knew at that point that Tulowitzki was still a good shortstop. But the problem is that right now he told the Blue Jays either I'm playing shortstop or I'm not playing. So he gave him an ultimatum, and that's why they just cut him loose. They didn't want that bad juju around the team, apparently.
Yeah, all right, it's gonna matter. All right, anyhow.
Yeah, they're gonna be a 70-win team. Okay, let's start the show. Hello, Hockey World. Today is Friday, December 14th, 2018.
I'm Jan Levine.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
And I'm Michael Agello, and this is the HockeyBuzzcast here on HockeyBuzz.com. We had 8 games on the schedule last night. We'll talk about a few of them. Take some questions at the end of the show. We'll talk about the World Junior and a few other things. Start with the game that we sort of previewed at the end of the show yesterday, which is the matchup of the teams with the 2 best records in the NHL. And really, it wasn't much of a contest after the last part of the second period. The Tampa Bay Lightning win 4-1, mostly on the back of Andrei Vasilevsky, who came back from a broken foot and made 48 saves, some of a very spectacular variety. But it was sort of an opportunistic game, even though the Lightning only had 21 shots on Frederik Andersen, but they got a shorthanded goal in the first period. They got a power play goal that just went over the goal line when Anderson made a glove save. And then the Leafs gave up 2 goals in 34 seconds in the last minute of the second period. But Russ, I don't know how much of this game you watched. I watched the entire thing. The thing that I come away with is you saw a more complete team, even though they were outchanced by the Leafs. And even though the Leafs had a lot of, there was a lot of things to be happy about if you're a Leaf fan. They couldn't beat Vasilevsky. You look at the Lightning, they're a deeper team, they're a better defensive team, and they had the better goalie on the night. So, to me, it shows that Kyle Dubas still has a lot of work, and that the heir to Julian Breezeball, the heir to Steve Yzerman, could pretty much sit on his hands, and that team will contend for the Stanley Cup.
Yeah, I came away with a few things. The first one was, yes, Vasilevsky is a great goalie, and when they asked me about him on Sirius XM, the writing, I felt like the writing was on the wall for him always to be a potential superstar goalie. So no shock there, but I hate when coaches make excuses and just say goalie stood on his head. That's why he's lost. We were lost. It wasn't. Tampa is defensively superior to the Leafs, and when the Leafs do pinch a little too far, you get a guy like Cirelli, and they couldn't catch him. And that's another problem for the Leafs is they almost shouldn't pinch at all with their defensemen because they're just not good enough. And you play a team like Tampa, you're going to get lost in that one big play. And I think that was the game-winning goal, right?
No, that was the game that was the goal that turned the game around. They were up 1-0. They were getting a lot of chances. Okay. It was a power play, and William Nylander comes up the ice, up the middle, gets poke checked, turns it over, and for some reason Jake Gardner decided to go to the right instead of staying up the middle, and Cirelli went the other way right up the middle and beat Anderson.
Yeah, and that play showed me something. Like, that play was like, okay, this is a flaw with the Leafs that has existed for a couple of seasons now, and because of the way the NHL is, they have not been able to get it rectified, and I don't know if they'll get it rectified this year. I know it's like Mike sounds like a broken record, always saying they got to do this or this to get that top 4 guy. And I always say it's hard to get that top 4 guy. And literally the entire time Brendan Shanahan has been there, they have not been able to fill this vacancy. They have filled it with lesser guys like Hainsey and other things, and they've not been able to fill this need.
And two things, Jan. One, you could see that Tampa Bay is much stronger in terms of offensive depth. I mean, their third line is what used to be their first line. You know, they had Palat and Killorn and Tyler Johnson as their third line. The fourth line was Adam Ernie and I think Cirelli.
Yep.
And the thing is that fourth line up against it was the third line up against the Leafs' fourth line. Babcock, after the goal that made it 3-1, puts out his fourth line, which was a makeshift of Freddie Gauthier, Par Lindholm, and Tyler Ennis. Ennis has had a good year. Lindholm has not been bad in terms of being a center that they signed out of the SHL, but Freddie Gauthier is 6'5", 230 pounds, and cannot keep up with the pace of the league. And that line was responsible for the death blow because they couldn't get the puck back. Johnson scores the goal. I don't know why a guy like Freddie Gauthier is in the NHL other than they like him as a kid, and he's a good kid. I have nothing against him in that respect, but
he's 6'4" all day long, Mike.
Yeah, he's 6'5", but the problem is he doesn't use his size, and I think he's a liability. And if they're going to beat teams in the playoffs, they need a fourth line that can actually do something. And with Freddie Gauthier, that line doesn't do anything.
Well, I mean, it's something we discussed, I think, like last week or 2 weeks ago about the fourth line there, that it's something they need to remediate. The defense, first of all, as Russ said, has been, I don't know if I'd call it an issue, but something that needs remediation and need to add in some additional talent. In Tampa, I mean, you look at that team, and they're playing without Anton Stroman, and they still have an amazing defense, even without Stroman in the lineup, who's been hurt. And then, as you said, you look at the depth that the Lightning have up front. I mean, their third line of Killorn, Cirelli, and Miller had played top 6 minutes after he came over last year. It's pretty good. And Cirelli is one of those guys. I actually wanted him over Howden for the Rangers when all the trade talks were going through. So that kind of gives you a sense as to how much I like Cirelli. And Adam Ernie's been a guy that's been on the cusp for a while. And Matthew Joseph has come up as another guy that Yzerman has found to put in that lineup. And if the Maple Leafs don't get themselves a really good fourth line, in my opinion, checking winger and even a checking center, and also a really good top 4 defenseman, you're going to have major issues in the playoffs. And as you said, the Lightning exposed the weaknesses that they had. And this is something when you have last matchups, especially at home, that's going to be a huge factor come playoff time.
Even though he's not a big player and doesn't provide the jam and the sandpaper that I think the Leafs need, what do you think of a guy like Carl Hagelin in terms of a late rental situation? Because I mean, I know the Kings are probably going to move him out as a rental before the deadline. He's got cup-winning experience and he's a very fast player. But what do you think of him as a playoff ad?
I mean, again, he's shown the ability to show some key playoff goals. He shows the ability to play the penalty kill. He's nowhere near the threat he was a couple of years ago. But if he's fully healthy, once he recovers from the knee injury, and a guy you plug into your lineup down that point in time when he comes back, the salary cap hit will be somewhat minimal. I'm sure they're going to have a lot of suitors for him. You would think second rounder, maybe third rounder for him is probably third rounder, or maybe a mid-tier prospect at best for him. But he is a guy that does fit. You can put him on the third and fourth line. You can put him on the power play. He's a guy you can put out there to try to change the dynamic of a game because of the speed that he presents. That's the type of guy that I would use, especially since he's known for being a checking line player, as opposed to somebody who's a scoring player that you're going to move down a line. Yeah,
if you have him on your playoff team, you might get a shorthanded goal or two off from him in the playoffs, which is huge, and it could turn around a game or a series. So I would get him just based on that.
Yeah, and the other thing is, it's funny because after the Nylander signing, you thought you'd heard the last of the Carolina-Toronto pipeline in terms of rumors, but basically it just started up with a different winger. Pierre LeBrun reported yesterday that, Carolina is looking for forwards, they're looking for scoring forwards, and the name now coming out is Kasperi Kapanen. And because Kapanen's got 12 goals, he was the best player on the ice for the Leafs, arguably last night. He's an RFA at the end of the year. I don't think it's going to be a problem signing him because he's got 1 year of top level performance, and this is not Nylander where he scored 60 points 2 years in a row. So I don't think it's going to cost him $5 million to sign Kasperi Kapanen. But everybody realizes the Leafs need at top 4D a right hand shot, and we know that Carolina's got Pesce and Falk and Dougie Hamilton, and they're loaded on the right side. So that rumor keeps perpetuating, Russ. And I'm sure Rick Dudley is
William Nylander as a sniper. You don't have a deal, and they may not deem him as a sniper because he's really not.
Yeah, but do they deem Kasperi Kapanen as a sniper?
No, I don't think they would.
I don't know if he's a sniper, but he's a guy. In my opinion, while Nylander is more of a setup guy, Kapanen is a guy who's more of a scorer in terms of a goal.
But Jen, what we're saying here. I mean, when you have an owner looking for a sniper, he's looking for a guy that's known for getting 30, 40 goals a year. That's what he's.
I mean, again, other than the Blues potentially maybe moving Tarasenko, and there's obviously issues with him there right now. Who else is going to be out there that's going to be a 30, 40 goal scorer that you can maybe get?
Well, that's the thing. I mean, they could get Kovalchuk, who has scored 30 goals before. They could get Tarasenko, perhaps, but I don't think St. Louis is going to part with Tarasenko. But Kovalchuk, you would call a sniper. It's going to be someone
but he's also an over 35 contract, and if he decides to sayonara street,
they may not care.
They could get Bobby Ryan, but they just have to buy him some Kevlar gloves to make sure his hands don't break.
They might look at Ryan as a sniper. Like that's the part of this that we don't know. We don't know what Tom Dundon considers a sniper, and I think he's waiting to trade those defensive assets for that type of player. So he's probably calling about Tarasenko. He's probably calling about the highest end guys there are, Jeff Carter's, guys like that, and seeing if they're going to be able to shake them loose. Don Waddell's probably doing that. But what's going to happen is I don't think Tarasenko's ever going to go anywhere. Carter, I don't think they're ready to throw in the towel on yet. And so it is going to be hard to get one of those guys, Jan. You're right.
Okay.
But I think it'll block the Leafs in the interim because even though that looks like a team they could trade with, that's not what the Leafs don't have a sniper to give up.
Well, and the thing is, though, I think the Leafs will move on to other teams who, there are other teams out there with defensemen. If Carolina is still playing footsie, they don't think that those players are, I'm sorry, Kasperi Kapanen will score 20 goals this year. Nylander will score 20 again because he probably won't this year because he's only going to play about 55
That's not
games.
Sniper territory, Mike. That's
okay. Well, compared to the crap that they got.
He doesn't think it's crap. He just says,
Well, I'm just saying. I mean,
I'm giving you the other side. I know you don't like it.
You traded 45 goals or 40 goals now.
He probably said he wasn't playing for them. We got to get off the Skinner thing.
But I'm just saying, hey, you trade a sniper, and now you're saying you need a sniper. I'm sorry. Well, anyway. All right. Next game, Buffalo Sabres are rebounding after a 5-game losing streak. They come back with a 3-1 victory. They won previous to this game, but they won 3-1 against the Arizona Coyotes. First, Russ, I'm a little confused here because we had heard it from Arizona that they were going to go with a goaltender rotation after the injury to Antti Raanta. The last 3 games are Darcy Kemper, and Darcy Kemper. That's a rotation.
Right, so it'll be like Kemper, Hill, Kemper,
Pickard.
Kemper. We don't know what the rotation is. It's just words. So look, Arizona's season's over. It doesn't really matter. We all knew that their season sort of hinged on Raanta and a few other things. It wasn't just Raanta. And Jan, you weren't here for the show, but I go back to falling back on. If you signed Antti Raanta to be your number one and play 60 games, you were never going to get that out of Antti Raanta. Okay. Do you agree or disagree?
Yeah, I mean, you know what? He's played very well, and I think he could have been the number one and gotten 50 games. I think 60 was really stretching it in terms of the usage for him, in terms of overusing him. But 50, I thought, was realistic. And I thought that Kemper would be able to fill in based upon what he's shown at times in the past. Now, as you said, with him out, with Hinostroza out, with Grabner out, and with a couple of other injuries also, they're in a whole heap of trouble right now.
Yeah, 47 is the most he's ever played, so 50 is the number. But again, knowing what this team was going to have to do to compete in the West, you needed to get something better than a guy who could literally only play 50 games.
Skinner scored his 22nd goal of the year, and Carter Hutton.
Sniper, Mike, that's good.
Right, he is. I mean, he's always, again, when he's healthy, and the only issues he's had has been a couple of concussions in the past, he has proven to be a sniper. I mean, that's exactly what he is. And at his age, he's going to get paid a lot of money in free agency this year.
He's 26. I think he turns 27 before July 1st of next year. It's an old 26 because he's played since he's 18. And like you said, Jan, he's had a couple concussion problems. I think that the number that came out from one of the morning host on WGR in Buffalo that was like over $9 million is just obscene and stupid, because I don't think it's going to cost. I don't think it's going to cost that much. And I don't think he can demand that much and actually get it. What do you think in terms of AAV that Jeff Skinner will get if he continues this and say scores 40 goals? What does he get on I'd say 5-year deal? Because I think
7.75.
Okay, so below 8. Jan, what do you think?
I'm going 8.25. 8.25.
Okay.
And I will tell you this: anytime Jan and I seem to volley around these things, it's usually somewhere in between the real AAV.
So 8 million, which means he's going to get as much as Phil Kessel.
Yeah,
but that was Phil Kessel from 3 years ago.
Capitalization. You can't go by numbers anymore. It's not a fair comparison.
Yeah. Okay. The Columbus Blue Jackets.
There was something, Mike. There was something that happened in that game. I don't know if you saw it.
You mean the Jack Eichel hit from behind on Christian Fischer?
Yeah, so Jack Eichel is officially in that territory where he could give a dirty hit and not get penalized for it.
Yeah.
And I thought that was kind of interesting. Now, Eichel and Fischer have played together as teammates before, and they showed the dads, and I'm assuming because I had the sound off, the Arizona dads made the trip, and it looked like Fisher's dad, if that was the one who kind of looked like he was getting mad, wanted to maybe belt Eichel for that hit because Fischer went off with a bloody mouth and after getting shoved into the boards.
It was into the dasher. I think
it's the dasher, yes.
Yeah. The Columbus Blue Jackets beat the LA Kings like most people have done, 4-1. Bobrovsky with the victory. Panarin with his 8th goal and 9th goals of the season. Josh Anderson with 13 goals. Jonathan Quick with the loss, Russ, and I heard discussion about this on TSN radio with Darren Drager, who's one of the insiders, talking about the viability of Quick being moved. And I know we talked about that before in connection with Philadelphia and some other teams. And the thing that he came up with, he's like, the number is manageable. The term may make teams hesitate, but the real question about Quick is the durability. And that's why if it's the Flyers, when you're talking about goalies like Neuwirth and Elliott who have had consistent injury problems, do you really want to trade for somebody who's got another 4 years at over $5 million that you don't know can stay in the lineup?
All right, but here's the problem with this. We are maybe talking about 25% of the goalies in the league who don't have some sort of injury history, because even Pekka Rinne has the groin problem too. I mean, there's very few goalies that don't have reoccurring injuries of some sort. Lundqvist has been one who's been pretty lucky. He hasn't had too many. Varlamov had the 1 year where he was hurt, but he might be the least injured guy that would be on the market. But that doesn't mean you should take him just because he's had the best injury history. So I don't know if you could just look at it that way. But I think the bigger question is, and I know the anonymous scout is probably watching, is will Jonathan Quick ever yield from playing 60 games? And will Jonathan Quick even want to get traded? Because he holds the hammer, right?
Yeah, I think he is a no move. And that was part of the reason why I think he took a little less to stay in LA. I mean, honestly, would you really want – I mean, we know that LA is going to go through probably a 2 to 3 year rebuild. They're probably going to try to shed salary. Although
but it might have to do with family. Family counts more now than it did in the 70s and 80s. And so when you're talking about this, and especially a guy who's won cups – he may not want to move anymore.
Right.
That's a possibility that nobody's sort of mentioning.
Now, the aforementioned Carolina Hurricanes, they took another loss yesterday against the Montreal Canadiens. Jan, the thing I thought was funny about this is that I heard just before the game that the Hurricanes had requested that the Canadians wear their, what are right now road whites, but for a long time have been their home whites, so the Hurricanes could wear their red jerseys. And that the aforementioned Thomas Dundon does not like the Hurricanes' white jerseys and wants to have them wear their red jerseys as much as possible. Now, I'll tell you what, we talked about this before. I prefer having the home team wear white and the road teams come in wearing their different colors, because you get to see the variety of colors. Otherwise, you just see your home team in the dark jersey and the other team in white, and it's the same boring thing every single time. So I'm actually on board with that in terms of Dundon, but this guy is concerning himself with things that are so trivial and not concerning himself with the aspects of his team that need to be improved.
He's looking at the marketing of it. That's what he's looking at. Baseball is the one who's ridiculous. They're the ones who have like 6 jerseys, and you never know what they're wearing in baseball. I think the rule should just be simply home team gets to choose, away team, you wear what you wear. And that's it. And that's the way it should go. And whatever colors that are available in the lexicon of your jerseys, that's what you could do. But I always think it should be the home team's choice.
I'm on board with that. Just as you said, in baseball, there's so many permutations you can't keep track. I think the Cincinnati Reds are having like 26 combinations next year or something.
Yeah.
Like
26. 26.
Well, because you can match tops with bottoms and hats and
I know I see the Mets wear that black jersey, which used to be like.
I like the black one. Don't start ripping on the black one, Mike.
No, but it used to be their spring training jersey, didn't it?
No, so the early 2000s they started wearing it.
Correct.
So I have the David Wright rookie one. It's from 2004. They wore the black, and it's not. I also know the all white ones they used to wear also.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a traditionalist. The white pinstripe home jersey, the gray jersey for the Yankees on the road. That's why, like, when they have that thing with the stupid softball names on the back of them, like All Rise for Judge and whatever, Gardner for Gardner. It's like, I'm upset about it because you're not supposed to have the names of the players on the jersey.
That was marketed to kids basically. Also, I mean, that was the whole purpose of that weekend.
Just remember this, Mike. The Yankees are a fully functioning Death Star. That's all you need to know.
Of which somebody already made that T-shirt, by the way, with the pinstripes on it that I saw yesterday.
That's funny.
The Death Star.
Huh?
Nothing. Just another Death Star reference. The Nashville Predators beat the Vancouver Canucks 4-3. Funny, it was brought up on Hockey Central today, and I know that he had been out, but they're doing all this. They're having the season that they're having, and PK Subban has been out for a significant chunk of time, and apparently it doesn't sound like it's an injury that he's going to come back very quickly from. And I have to say that I'm impressed that the Predators haven't skipped a beat without, arguably a Norris Trophy level defenseman on their roster.
Sure, but they were going to want him at some point. I agree with you. I think what's more interesting in this game is something that continues to grow is Elias Pettersson got another point. So he's got 33 points in 28 games, and he's a plus 11. Like, this is a pretty well-rounded rookie, man. This is going into crazy good territory. But the other thing that
he's crazy good. He is crazy good.
The other thing that doesn't really get talked about, and it's starting to pick up, is that Kyle Turris is starting to pick up some steam, and everybody wants to sort of jump on, his salary. But now that you see that this is sort of like a really well-rounded team, one of the best teams, some of those players that appeared to have salaries that maybe were a little high, they're starting to produce too. So this is a dangerous team. I mean, we knew they'd be dangerous. They're going to take them. They're going to go pretty far, and they've got depth on defense too.
Also, a couple of things. So in terms of Subban, he may be back in a week. Suppose he was the report a couple of days ago. And you talked about, you look at that top 4 blue line. I mean, that's a stout top 4 with a decent 5'6" and a pretty elite goalie in Rinne and what he's shown. Turris came back yesterday. He had been out since November 23rd and had an assist. And they're also doing without Philippe Forsberg, who just went out, who's going to miss another 3 to 5 weeks.
And Arvidsson.
You have a guy like Ryan Hartman, who stepped in pretty ably up front. It was a nice little acquisition by that team. It's played very well and surprisingly so. So that is a really good Nashville team that doesn't get talked about. But let's not go through the fact that we're going to see Winnipeg and Nashville again in the.
We're not going to. No. Minnesota's coming out of the West. They are still coming out of the West.
Okay, Russ. Okay. Well, years ago when they had that really good record, right?
You'll see.
I was going to bring this up a little later, but when you bring up that Nashville versus Winnipeg, I know that there were a lot of questions being asked of some of the Leaf players before the game yesterday regarding the quote unfairness of the playoff format. And Yeah, I can understand from their point of view where they're going to get 105 to 110 points and probably face two teams, either Tampa Bay or Boston, in the first round, where they're going to probably be the underdog because A, they haven't proved they can beat Boston, and B, you saw what they did against Tampa, and Tampa's a loaded team. They're one of the best teams in the league. So I don't know what the solution is, if it's going back to the 1-8 format or whatever, but there are teams out there, and there are conference or division situations where you're not going to get the best matchups going in the conference finals and the Stanley Cup finals because some of these teams will be out by the second round.
It's true.
I mean, we've discussed this a whole bunch. I mean, I know there's a lot of consternation and been a lot of discussion on this. Determining the playoff format moving forward, especially with the league expanding, to me, that's the perfect opportunity if you're going to revamp it. Go ahead and revamp it. Go back to maybe 1 through 8 in each conference and go that route. And that way you set up some of the quote-unquote sexier matchups when it comes to the finals, as opposed to some of the stuff we've seen. They're never going to go back 1 to 16.
No,
it's not going to work from a logistics perspective and a cost perspective, but you can do 1 through 8 in each conference and go back to that kind of routine is probably the best way to do it.
Do you want them to go back to the best of 3 first round like they did in the early?
No.
Yes.
We start going to adding extra teams to the playoffs and doing 7.
No crossover. Crossover. We don't want crossovers. None of that.
Jan, you're going to see that, though. I'm telling you, in the new CBA, it's being leaked out there. I bet you the owners are going to want that. There's going to be a play-in 7-10 versus 8 and 8-9. It's going to happen.
They see what baseball did with the wild card, and they think it's the best thing since sliced bread. But it works in baseball. It's much harder, I think, in hockey to do it.
It is harder in hockey. I do think it's a different feel for baseball. I do. I don't know why. I can't really give you. I can't quantify it, but I do think that for baseball, look, you never want to decide any series in one game, right? But I think for baseball, because it is such a long season, there have been seasons where they've played 163 games, like when the Mets beat the Reds, and simply because there was just a tie. So I think baseball's had it occur before. Hockey's never had it occur, and I don't know if you really need it to occur.
Yeah, a couple other games. The aforementioned Minnesota Wild 5-1 over the hapless Florida Panthers. So
it's a bad win for Minnesota. Got it, Mike.
He's all on this Minnesota thing. What's going on there, Russ? Put a little money down?
Nope, no money.
Okay.
Just gut feeling.
Okay. Look, I like Dubnik. He finally started to pick it up again. For 3 weeks there, he was pretty hellacious.
He was, but that's what he does, right? He starts off a certain way, and then when he gets on a roll, he's quite capable.
Remind me next time when I'm having my fantasy draft that I make sure to keep that in mind as I'm going.
But they have Stalock as a backup, and that's a hell of a backup.
Oh, yeah. Well, he played well in San Jose for a couple of years ago also. So
the Winnipeg Jets beat Edmonton 5-4 in overtime on a Josh Morrissey goal.
And by the way, no, look how good Josh Morrissey's becoming. I mean, he is becoming a really, really good defenseman. And it's going to be some interesting decisions to see what they do with Jacob Trouba, seeing how well Morrissey has panned out there.
Well,
I don't think anybody's surprised at that. I mean, he always had the talent. I think he's different than Trouba in that we all believe Trouba can play better defensively, but they're still going to go with Morrissey because of the offense. Like, there's no question.
And one more thing in that game is Darnell Nurse taking over from the top power play unit for Clefbaum with Clefbaum out. And they need Nurse to play well for them to have any shot of staying within the race there.
I got to tell you, that's not really his role. It might have been in juniors. He's really not that guy. He's got to.
I know. But he's going to have no choice now because I don't think they're importing anybody.
This is where they miss Sakara. They miss a lot. But in regards to Morrissey, I mean, they were lucky they got him on the bridge deal. They got another year of him at $3 million, and they're going to make their decision on Trouba this summer because Trouba's 1 year away from unrestricted free agency, and if they go to arbitration, that means they let him walk for nothing. So, as Peter has said on previous shows, this will probably be the last year that you see Trouba in a Winnipeg jersey because they have to sign Morrissey now. They can open up that window on July 1st. You have to get him locked up. And now if he's growing into that two-way defenseman where he can score 10 goals a year, you just can't afford. I mean, maybe you trade Bufflin, but I don't think they're going to do that either. So I think they're gonna move Trouba this summer.
They will move Trouba this summer. Going back to Edmonton just for a second, I would use McDavid running the power play. I would.
5 forwards, you mean?
Yep. Hitchcock wouldn't do it, but you know what? I think if they did it, they would get surprisingly great results because McDavid is totally capable. And honestly, he's probably the best guy on the team to do it anyhow, but Klefbom does have a good shot. Yeah. I just worry that Nurse's shot is not that accurate. And that's going to cause – it's going to be like Dan McGillis. I don't know if it's going to be that bad, but Dan McGillis had a great shot too, but he just never got it in the right spot on that.
Yeah, and he had the most hits in the NHL when he was in Edmonton, and that was because of the bad scorekeeping. Last game was Sharks beating the Dallas Stars 3-2. Sharks, now 17-11-5. They're starting to get up.
Very quietly, they're moving up. And Joe Pavelski's been absolutely on fire the last couple of years.
And he's a UFA at the end of the year, so this is a salary drive. And Timo
Meyer, never, ever, ever. Not even for 10 minutes.
Yep. Timo Meyer, Russ, 18 goals.
I know. There were people ripping me last year because Timo Meyer wasn't doing maybe as well as I thought he could do. And sometimes it takes a little bit for guys to click, but he is a highly skilled, really good goal scorer. He's fast. He's got some size. Timo Meyer has always had this in him, so I'm happy for the kid. But yeah, Pavelski, trust me, he's never hit in the open market.
Okay, we'll talk a little bit about the World Junior here before we take your questions in the chat, so you can start putting them in there now. Russ, it's sometimes dangerous to take things sort of off of a tweet and out of context, but Pierre Maguire was on TSN 690, which I believe is in Calgary, and was asked about NHL teams tanking for Jack Hughes. And his response was, and Jack Hughes will be, one of Team USA's best players in the upcoming World Junior in Vancouver and Victoria. And he said of Hughes, he's not Nathan McKinnon. He's not Connor McDavid. He's not Austin Matthews. I think it's a reach to call him a generational player, a big reach.
I think he's completely wrong. I don't think he's seen him play enough. I think when Mitch Gallo says Nico Hischier, he's completely wrong. Nico Hischier has some really great playmaking abilities, not like Jack Hughes. I'm telling you, you could run an entire team's offense through Jack Hughes. Power play, even strength. I'm telling you, that's the kind of player he is. Nico Hischier, when he got 52 points last year, he's nowhere near that this year. Might top out at 60, 65 points one year. Jack Hughes could top out at 80, 85 when he gets to be right in the NHL. I think he will be a similar point producer to Austin Matthews. I do. I don't think he is McKinnon, but actually he might be just as good a skater. And McKinnon's got that speed through the neutral zone, and Hughes is the more of the new age edges guy. And you're going to see Jack Hughes, guys, he gets behind the defense. Guys cannot track him for long.
Well, let me ask this: first of all, and this is my personal belief, this is size bias because Hughes is 5'10" and 160 pounds.
Yeah.
The only thing
160 might be.
The only thing I question is whether his fate will be similar to, say, Mitch Marner's, who's, Mitch Marner's 6 foot and 160 pounds, and maybe teams see him more as a winger, but his vision on the ice, his abilities to set up plays, his speed and his edge work, that's something you want to utilize up the middle. That's not something you want to relegate to a wing position.
Who's talking about?
No, I'm saying there are some teams that might see the size.
No.
I don't think so.
I don't think so. He's already great he's already really good at faceoffs. I think when he comes in the league, he'll be better. He could be better than Connor McDavid on faceoffs in a year. 1 year out, I think he might.
If you think about it, right? Look at what Crosby was when he came into the league. That was an area of weakness for him.
Right.
He worked and became better. So even if it is something he has to work on,
he will have to work on it just from a strength factor
perspective, which is something he'll work on in the NHL anyway.
Yeah. But everything is there for him to be great at faceoffs. And if you think about it, that's the one failing of McDavid's game is he's under 50%. That's the only failing.
So, Russ, I'll ask you this question because you can answer better than me. If Hughes had been draft eligible the last several years, right, where would he have gone in the draft?
Well, give me first
overall.
You got to give me the year.
So, 2000.
Well, use last year. Use last year.
Last year, he would have gone first overall.
Okay, what about the Nico Hischier year? He probably would have gone first overall also.
Gone first overall.
And the year before that, 16?
That's where...
Second, after Matthews.
That's where it gets debatable, and he probably would have gone second.
Okay.
Yeah, but ahead of line A because we know the center bias when it comes to.
So Russ, Mike, he's basically in essence somewhat of a generational type of talent. So I don't think
that's why that's why I think Pierre Maguire's response is sort of bizarre because I think he's the only one who I've heard say that Jack Hughes isn't somebody who teams shouldn't tank for. I think, first of all, I think teams, if there are teams out there like St. Louis and Chicago and Los Angeles that are so far out of the playoffs, I don't care who the first pick is, you should tank because that just increases your chances of getting.
Another thing. So Fash out in the chat room is saying Alexis Lafreniere is better than Hughes, right? And so I've seen Lafreniere play, and all I could say is don't get seduced by junior points because Hughes for the last 2 years has been playing against college teams. The NTDP has been playing against more college teams. So he's been playing against older players now for a couple of years. So if you want to say Lafreniere is better because he's 6'1", 185, I'm disagreeing with you. So.
Now, Russ, Team USA could have been a lot stronger had it been, not been for Brady Tkachuk playing really well with the Senators, with Casey Middlestat playing with the Sabres, and the Sabres are not going to let Middlestat go to the World Junior, but they're still pretty good. I mean, the Hughes brothers, I mean, it is going to be a pretty strong team.
The team's going to go through the Hughes brothers. Like, that's going to be the fun part of this because except for like NHL All-Star games, we're never going to see these guys play together again. And that's going to be an amazing thing to see them playing on the power play together and some at even strength, depending on where they match up in that game. These guys are fun, man. They're smart. They skate great. They pass great. They won't have the telepathy of like the Sedins or anything because they haven't played together at high levels very much either. But I bet you they'll click.
Are you going to Vancouver, Russ?
No, I am not. Not this year. I'm going to the draft, but not for that.
Is U.S. Canada again on what, Christmas Eve, New Year's Eve, like they always do? Or
could be, but I don't know that for certain. I didn't look at the schedule. It came out yesterday, and I haven't had a chance to look at it. Someone in the chat room probably will say.
It's always a great tournament. I mean, but some of the names this year, it should be a lot of fun to watch this tournament together.
Yeah, Kravtsov is. I will tell you that sometime later today or tomorrow on Sportsology, I've got a little bit of an exclusive coming on Kravtsov, and so that's something to keep an eye out for. He'll be great for Russia. He'll be fun to watch.
Yeah. I don't want to see Keandre Miller for U.S., obviously.
Keandre Miller is another key player. I'm going to tell you, watch the two lesser guys that Pittsburgh cleaned up with on the draft last year, Philip Hallander for Sweden.
And Addison.
And Callan Addison, I think, will really shine this year and show people.
When there was rumors about if Pittsburgh was going to make a trade and look to get a guy, and then we're going to look to deal somebody, I was like, yeah, I don't want Sprong. I don't want those guys. I want Addison. That's the guy I want.
Yeah, I don't know at this point if he's even tradable.
No, I mean, you got him, what, second round, I think you got him?
Second round, yeah.
And Hallander was third round, right?
Second round.
Now, Team Canada right now, they may have an injury problem with Alex Formenton, the really quick forward played some games with Ottawa this year.
The fastest forward. I mean, on that team, I don't know if Hughes, if you put him next to Hughes, it would be close. Formenton might be like straight line faster, but Hughes, I think, is more elusive with the way he skates and the speed.
And it's a knee injury, so, I mean, that would obviously affect his speed. I know that Bob McKenzie said right now the best player that he's seen on Team Canada's roster was a Bruins draft pick, Jack Studnicka.
Studnicka really, it's funny. What's funny about him is preseason, he really gave it a go at making that team. And we spoke to, now I'm forgetting, Jamie. He used to be with the Dallas Stars.
Langenbrunner?
Yeah, Langenbrunner, who's with the Bruins. Yeah. And he said Studnicka was dead set on making that team. Dead set. And was a little upset when he didn't. So now I think we're all seeing this like extra chip on him, and he already had a great game rolling and coming. And so now I think we're really going to see it in the World Juniors. It's going to be fun. It's nice that 10 years later, like I would say 14 years ago, I really used to bitch about no coverage at all in the U.S. And then it started to get a little better. Last 3 or 4 years, a little better. Now it seems like the NHL network's finally like almost going all in, like not just Team USA games.
Yeah, and with Canada, they're really strong up the middle. Morgan Frost, Barrett Hayton, Evan Bouchard on defense. I mean, they're really, and right now it sounds like it's going to be Michael DiPietro and Leaf draft pick Ian Scott as their two goaltenders.
I think DiPietro will end up being the guy.
Yeah, probably.
He's got the pedigree. He's won a Memorial Cup, and he's a pretty steady Eddie. I don't know if he's a superstar.
Yeah.
You know, I go back to 2005. Mike, who was the Leafs goalie they got from team?
Oh, Justin Pogge.
Justin Pogge was a very good goalie, right?
Yeah.
He won the gold medal. He was very solid. He just never got any better. I think DiPietro is a notch above Justin Pogge. He probably can't cook like him because I know Pogge's a chef. But I don't know if DiPietro is like an NHL star yet. I don't know about that.
Yeah, and the only reason I think Scott has an outside chance is because he's 22-1 right now with Prince Albert in the WHL, and he just got signed to an ELC by the Leafs. But I mean, that record, you know, they may want to go with the hot goalie, but I don't know. I mean, DiPietro's got
never goes with the hot anything. It always seems like it's based on how they look in camp and what they thought of them when they built the roster. Goalies, and look, let's face it, sometimes Team Canada gets it wrong on goalies too.
Yes. Well, we'll talk about more about this because there's some players on Finland and on Sweden that will be on the lookout.
Oh yeah, I'm just giving you a few players here.
Yeah, but let's go to the chat. We'll go to some questions here that we can ask. They can ask all of us in the next 5 to 10 minutes. Go ahead, Ross.
All right. So we did. John Murphy asked about Hughes, and I did answer the absurdity of that comparison. Russ, do you think the Flames will make a move for a goalie? I don't think they're going to be able to. I think too many teams are looking for a goalie, and unless they do it now, I
think they will. But the question is, first of all, I think they would have to move Smith out,
right? Which is going to be hard enough on its own.
Yeah, but they could eat salary on that because it's only for the rest of this year. They have the cap space to do that. I mean, to get another team to take them and then take – I mean, I could see Craig Anderson, somebody like that, a proven playoff guy. He's got another year left in his contract. I don't know about – going down the road of a rental, like they're not. Colorado's not going to trade Varlamov. Columbus is probably not going to trade Bobrovsky. So, a Craig Anderson or do you want Jake Allen? I don't know if I'd want him, but I think Anderson.
Don't think they're going to look at any of what's out there as an upgrade.
And I think Anderson would be an upgrade over Mike Smith?
Yeah. No. I mean, again, I think it all depends on how hurt Smith is. And honestly, Rittich played fairly well when he stood in for Smith. When Smith,
I think they're going to end up going with that. I think Jan's right.
I think they like Rittich a lot more obviously than Gillies, who they just called up, even though Smith may not miss much time. I think they may give Rittich a shot to kind of run with the role if Smith is going to miss some more time and see what happens given where they are in the standings.
I think so too. And I do like Gillies, but I haven't seen him in a year, so we have to see. Esmir asked, do you think the Penguins have given up on Matt Murray since it's getting hard for him to stay healthy? No, I think, like I said, with his dad dying and just injuries, I think he'll be fine. I think once he gets back, the team will be fine.
He's got a lot of rope. He won 2 Stanley Cups in his first 2 years. He's got a lot of rope.
I appreciate the post of Guy Latouche, who said, he said that I was dead on about Timo Meier. That was very nice.
Guy Latouche, okay.
Yeah, it's we got a fancy crowd here. Golden Joy is new to the show, and the question was,
welcome.
I want to ask about Matt Zuccarello, my favorite Ranger. Do you see a role for him for Quinn, and what other teams would want him? I don't see a role for him with Quinn, and I do think he's going to get traded. Yeah. Where do I think he might go? I think a team like Edmonton would be interested in him. I think
whenever there's an ex-Ranger, I think Tampa's involved.
Yeah, I don't think Tampa this time, because I don't know if they would have to give somebody of like pretty decent salary going back. So I think
Tyler Johnson.
I think Dallas could be interested because Dallas could use a wily guy like that. If you notice, Spezza's having like a great year for them. You put 2 adept guys like that, Spezza and Zuccarello, on the same power play.
But could this be? Let me ask this to both of you, since you're Rangers experts. Could this be the Jairus Familia trade of the hockey season, meaning that Zuccarello gets traded and he comes back?
I could see. I mean, again, I think Elliot Friedman in his 31 Thoughts podcast mentioned Nashville. I'm not sure if I'd find that a direct fit. I could also see a team like Colorado maybe having some interest to bolster
a veteran guy
and put him on the second line. I mean, I do think obviously Zuccarello loves New York. I mean, I was one of those, and Russ knows with the blog, beating the drums to bring him back when he went over the KHL for a while and thought it was really stupid they didn't bring him back. And one of those guys, look, he took a hometown discount to a certain extent to stay there. He could have gotten more money at the time when he signed his contract. And I think the point now is I think he wants to stay in New York. The only question becomes is what happens with the rest of the roster around him? And since they're going to be in rebuilding mode, as you said, if you want to call it the Jeris Familia type trade, because Familia desperately wanted back in New York, you could get a thing if he's willing to come back at a fairly significant discount to what he's already signed for now, just because he wants to be back in New York, and he'd probably be a third-line player on the Rangers if he came back down the road.
Well, okay, let me ask this. Kevin Hayes, keep or is he gone?
No, I think he's gone.
Okay. Nemestikov, keep or is he gone?
He's keeper for now because I don't think they know what he is yet.
I mean, Nemestikov has played better since he got scratched earlier in the year. I was not a big fan of signing. First of all, last year when the trade went down, we all knew he was a product of the line mates that he was on. And he wasn't playing particularly well earlier this year, but he stepped up when he got moved to the top line with Kreider and Zibanejad. I wasn't a big fan of giving him a 2-year deal, but I know talking to Russ and others, they felt it made him more attractive because he was cost secure for the $4 million. And you look at what the Rangers did with the Strome deal, where they ended up trading Spooner for Strome, but kept $900,000 of cap hit in order to facilitate a deal. You could find something similar happen now, getting another guy on a short-term deal and flip him if he doesn't work out also.
Do you think they rent Hayes or do you think they keep him?
I mean, I go back and forth. Look, I'm biased. I think Kevin Hayes, and Russ and I disagree on this, I think, at times. I think Hayes has a lot more to give offensively.
Not at times, every time.
I think he was sheltered last. Yeah, that's true. I think he was sheltered last year. I think he's blossomed in the new role. I think if you could, the problem is you do have a backlog or a logjam of centers potentially, depending on what you want to do with Hedel and Anderson and how you want to deploy each of them. Are they centers or are they wingers? In my opinion, I personally think Hayes should be brought back. The question becomes length of deal. Is it 5 or 6 years? Dollars? Can you get him for $6 million? And does he want a no movement or no trade clause? To me, are the three big components that they have to decide when it comes to Hayes. I think there will be substantive discussions that take place right around the new year in a couple of weeks to see the direction they want to go. And then they'll make a decision. Are you going to move him this year and hope to get him back? Or are you going to sign him long-term and say, look, we're locking you up? Again, the cap is going up, and they will have enough room based upon
I worry about
weeks ago. They can add Panarin or Stone without a problem.
I worry about Hayes becoming like a fat cat if you lock him up to too high a salary. He's shown
it's possible.
It has been in his nature. He is a good player. No matter what, I think you let him go for the assets, and then if he really wants to come back, he'll come back.
Okay, next question, Russ.
Next question: do I think this is from BK Ups? Do I think the Rangers will go big on UFA if guys like Stone hit the market? Yes, I do.
Panarin, Stone.
I think Panarin and Karlsson are on their radar. That's who I think are on their radar.
Do you think they find a sucker to take Mark Stahl?
No.
Okay.
Wait, hold on. Stahl, honestly, besides Frederick Claesson, has been their most consistent defenseman this year.
He's had a good year.
He's had a good year, but I'm talking about. I'm not talking about the quality of the player. I'm talking about the salary and the term.
Again, he's got. First of all, I think he's got a no movement clause. You'd have to get his buy-in. It depends on where he would go. Secondly, it also depends on how you're going to construct the rest of your team because, again, I was a big proponent of bringing in Shattenkirk. I thought defensively he would be a lot better. He's been snake bit a bit by injuries, but he hasn't been particularly good. But Stahl's only got 2 years left at $5.7 million, which is a lot of money after this deal. But if you can facilitate a deal where you eat part of the cap hit as opposed to buying him out, that may be a direction in which they go, and especially when you have Brendan Smith and Shattenkirk, and also Brady Shea with the way he's played, eating up a ton of cap room and not necessarily bringing back the bang for the buck that you signed him to.
Right.
All right. We'll go with like one or two more, and then that's it. Washed Out wants to know what teams do you think will be most interested in Wayne Simmons, and what do you think the Flyers could get for him? I think the Leafs and the Canadiens, if they were looking for the Leafs, you would want to try and get Kapanen. You would, but I think that would be contingent on if the Leafs could lock up Simmons.
It's funny. It's funny because I heard Carl Koliakovo, former St. Louis Blue, who is now a radio host in Toronto, and he was talking about Wayne Simmons, who's playing right wing, but he says he's played left wing in the past. I would assume that's with LA. And even though he's a right-hand shot, and that's where the Leafs need help. So if he can play left wing, which he says he can, then I think the Leafs would be totally in. But they're not going to be the only team. I think Boston would be in on Wayne Simmonds.
I just don't know if Boston wants to really give up much because they have so many injury problems. But I think the other team is Montreal. And if I were the Flyers, I'd say, sure, I would trade your Wayne Simmonds for Noah Juleson. Let's do it.
That's their only defensive. Him or Victor Mete.
But they've traded defensive prospects before, Mike. I mean,
yeah. Do you think they learned from their previous stupidity?
I don't know. That's it.
Well, I mean, they traded what was it? Sergachev they traded to Tampa.
Sergachev for Drouin. Yeah.
And wait. If they didn't learn from the McDonough trade and not trade Sergachev, why do you think that the second trade is going to make them look?
Yeah, that was two different general managers.
Yeah, and they made the same mistake with each general manager. So it's the organization as a whole.
That's why I'm reaching out and I'm trying to get Noah Juleson. Thank you.
Any more?
It? Nope, that's it.
All right, sorry, as I'm eating ice. All right, guys, great show. We will be back on Monday with another edition of the Hockey Buzzcast. Enjoy your hockey weekend. For Jan Levine, for Russ Cohen, I'm Michael Agello. Thanks for watching, and remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey.